Why does it go? We didn't come here to fight for them!
They sailed from the frozen north with axes in hand, gods on their lips, and glory burning in their eyes. Viking warriors have captured our imagination for centuries, and Hollywood has spent decades trying to put the raw, savage mythic power on screen. Some films nailed it, others missed the mark entirely. But the ones that got it right, they left us breathless. So, today we are counting down the 50 greatest Viking movies of all time, ranking the best Norse war films ever made, from the forgotten gems to the absolute legends of the genre. 50th place, The Viking, 1928. Let us go all the way back to the silent era to kick things off, because The Viking from 1928 deserves far more recognition than it gets. Directed by Roy William Neill, this early adventure film was one of the very first Hollywood productions to tackle Norse subject matter with genuine ambition and scale. Based on the novel The Thrall of Leif the Lucky, the story follows Leif Erikson on his legendary voyage to the shores of North America, centuries before Columbus made the same journey and got all the credit. For its time, the film featured impressive ship sequences and sweeping location cinematography that gave it a sense of real geographical scale. It was also one of the earliest films to use a synchronized Vitaphone musical score, making it a technical milestone as well as a fascinating historical curiosity. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But as the grandfather of Viking cinema, it earns its place at the bottom of this list and deserves far more attention than the history books have given it. 49th place, Severed Ways, The Norse Discovery of America, 2007. Here is a film that is emphatically not for everyone, and director Tony Stone would almost certainly take that as the highest possible compliment. Severed Ways is a bizarre, hypnotic, aggressively low-budget independent film that follows two Norse warriors stranded on the eastern coast of North America after their expedition abandons them to their fate. Stone shot the entire film in the Vermont wilderness with a skeleton crew and almost no resources, and the result is something genuinely unlike anything else in the entire Viking genre. There is almost no dialogue anywhere in the film. The pacing is deliberately slow, meditative, and occasionally maddening, and the heavy metal soundtrack is simultaneously ridiculous and absolutely perfect for the experience. Critics were deeply divided. Mainstream audiences were thoroughly baffled, but serious genre enthusiasts embraced it as a bold and completely uncompromising vision of what Norse survival in the New World truly might have looked like. It is raw, it is weird, and it is completely and utterly unforgettable. 48th place, Beowulf and Grendel, 2005. Adapting the oldest surviving piece of Old English literature was always going to be a monumental creative challenge, and Beowulf and Grendel, directed by Sturla Gunnarsson and shot entirely in Iceland, rises to meet that challenge with admirable seriousness and genuine artistic ambition. The film follows the warrior Beowulf, played with muscular intensity by Gerard Butler, as he travels to the court of the Danish king Hrothgar to confront the monstrous Grendel, who has been systematically terrorizing the royal mead hall for years. What sets this particular adaptation apart from everything that came before and after is its refusal to treat Grendel as a simple, uncomplicated monster. Instead, the film excavates his humanity, his grief over his murdered father, and the profound rage that drives his nightly attacks, giving audiences a villain they can actually feel genuine sympathy for. The Icelandic landscape is breathtaking throughout, raw and otherworldly, and completely indifferent to human suffering, and the film uses it with real intelligence, a flawed but deeply thoughtful entry in the genre. 47th place, Outlander, 2008. What happens when you take a Viking warrior and combine him with an alien from outer space? You get Outlander, and it is every bit as gloriously, magnificently absurd as that description makes it sound. Jim Caviezel plays Kanan, a soldier from another world, who crash lands in ancient Norway and must form an uneasy alliance with a local Viking clan to hunt down the Morwen, a terrifying extraterrestrial creature he accidentally brought along for the ride. Directed by Howard McCain, this is pure, unashamed genre entertainment, wildly pulpy and consistently genuinely exciting. The creature effects hold up surprisingly well, considering the budget, The action sequences are staged with real flair, and the film commits completely and without apology to its own deliriously ridiculous premise without ever once winking at the camera. It drew inevitable comparisons to Beowulf, and those comparisons are not entirely unfounded, but Outlander stands magnificently on its own as a deeply fun piece of Norse-infused science fiction that deserves a much, much larger audience. 46th place, Hammer of the Gods, 2013. Hammer of the Gods is a lean, mean, brutally efficient Viking film that throws its young protagonist into the deep end from its very first scene and never once allows him to come up for air. A young Viking prince is dispatched by his ailing father on a treacherous journey through the savage English countryside to locate his long-exiled brother, a legendary and reportedly monstrous warrior who may represent the only hope of saving their people. What unfolds feels far closer to a survival horror film than to a traditional war epic, and that tonal choice is precisely what makes it so distinctive and so compelling. The violence is visceral and genuinely shocking. The atmosphere is oppressively, suffocatingly dark, and the film maintains a level of dread and tension that simply never releases its grip. Some critics dismissed it as style over substance, and that charge is not entirely unfair. But for fans of gritty, relentless, deeply committed Norse cinema, Hammer of the Gods delivers exactly what its title so boldly promises. 45th place, Arn, The Knight Templar, 2007. Arn. The Knight Templar is a sweeping, lavishly produced Swedish historical epic based on Jean Guillau's beloved trilogy of novels, and it represents one of the most ambitious Scandinavian cinematic productions of the entire 2000s decade. While it straddles the line between Viking saga and medieval crusader drama, its Norse roots run deep and strong throughout every frame of the story. Arn Magnusson, played with quiet charisma and considerable physical commitment by Joachim Naderqvist, is raised in a monastery as a warrior monk before being exiled to the Holy Land, where he serves as a Knight Templar and fights alongside Saladin before eventually returning home to defend his beloved Sweden. The film's battle sequences are genuinely spectacular. The landscape cinematography across both Sweden and Morocco is gorgeous, and the production values rival anything that Hollywood was producing at the time. It was a massive commercial and critical success across Scandinavia, and deserves vastly greater recognition in the international marketplace. A grand, old-fashioned, passionately crafted epic. 44th place, Valhalla, 1986. Long before the age of streaming brought Norse mythology into every living room on the planet, there was Valhalla, the beloved Danish animated feature from 1986 that introduced an entire generation of Scandinavian children to the world of the Norse gods. Based on the iconic and enormously popular comic strip, this charming, funny, and surprisingly emotionally resonant adventure follows two young children who are transported to Asgard by the god Thor himself, and become unwilling participants in the ongoing battles and chaotic dramas of the Norse pantheon. Yes, it is unambiguously a children's film, but Valhalla holds a fierce and completely genuine place in the hearts of Scandinavian audiences who grew up watching it, and it treated its mythological source material with a warmth, a humor, and a genuine intelligence that most adult-oriented Norse films fail to achieve. The animation is inventive and expressive, the characters are immediately lovable, and the film's playful tone never once condescends to its young audience or undermines the mythology it draws from. A classic by any measure you care to apply. 43rd place, The Last Kingdom, Seven Kings Must Die, 2023. Technically a feature film continuation of the acclaimed BBC television series rather than a standalone production, Seven Kings Must Die earns its rightful place on this list by delivering exactly the kind of Viking-era political intrigue, brutal warfare, and morally complex characterization that genuine fans of the Norse war film tradition crave and deserve. Set in the turbulent aftermath of King Edward's death, the film follows the endlessly compelling Uhtred of Bebbanburg as the fractured kingdoms of England tremble on the very edge of unification, with Viking warlords and Saxon kings maneuvering for supremacy in every direction. The battle sequences are choreographed with genuine ferocity and impressive scale, The performances across the board are sharp and deeply committed, and the film captures the brutal, politically treacherous world of the Viking Age with an authenticity that its television budget never quite allowed. For longtime fans of the series, it is an enormously satisfying and emotionally fulfilling conclusion to one of the great Norse war sagas of the modern era. 42nd place, Ironclad, 2011. Ironclad is not a Viking film in the strictest geographical or historical sense, but it inhabits the exact same blood-soaked, mud-caked, uncompromisingly brutal world of early medieval Britain, where Norse influence permeates every dark corner of the landscape. Directed by Jonathan English with considerable visual flair and zero interest in sanitizing the violence of the era, the film is set in 1315 and follows a desperate band of warriors, including a Knights Templar played with fierce intensity by James Purefoy, who must hold the crumbling Rochester castle against the relentless assault of the tyrannical King John. The siege warfare on display is extraordinarily visceral, arguably representing some of the most unflinching and anatomically honest medieval combat sequences ever put on film. The cast, which includes Brian Cox delivering an absolutely magnificent, scenery-devouring performance as the deranged King John, elevates the sometimes thin material considerably and keeps every scene thoroughly watchable. Ironclad is relentlessly bleak, relentlessly entertaining, and for fans of the Norse war film tradition, it scratches precisely the right itch at precisely the right moment. 41st place, Eric the Viking, 1989. Rounding out our opening group is Eric the Viking, Terry Jones's delightfully eccentric, deeply philosophical comedy adventure that sends its heroic but thoroughly confused protagonist on a grand quest to end the age of Ragnarok and bring peace to a world that seems constitutionally opposed to the very concept. Tim Robbins plays Eric, a Viking who is genuinely, fundamentally uncomfortable with all the raping and pillaging that his culture demands of him as a baseline professional requirement, and so he gathers a crew of deeply reluctant companions and sets sail to find the gods and politely request that they bring the age of violence to a close. Based on Jones's own celebrated children's book, and infused with the kind of anarchic, wonderfully absurdist British humor you would fully expect from a Monty Python alumnus. The film is genuinely funny, surprisingly philosophical about the nature of belief and cultural conditioning, and packed with wonderful comic performances. It flopped catastrophically at the box office upon release, which represents a genuine and lasting injustice, because Eric the Viking is a witty, warm-hearted, and thoroughly wonderful film that holds up beautifully with every passing decade. 40th place, Ragnarok, 2013 Norwegian cinema, delivered something genuinely special with Ragnarok, a family adventure film that blends its Norse mythological source material with the structure and energy of a classic Spielberg-era adventure, and comes up with something fresh, exciting, and deeply entertaining. When an archaeologist discovers a runic inscription that may contain the secret of the legendary Norse apocalypse itself, he takes his 2 young children and a small, ill-prepared team of researchers into the uncharted wilderness of Finnmark in the far north to investigate what it might mean. What they eventually find changes everything they thought they understood about Viking history. Director Mikkel Brene Sandemos crafts a film that feels unmistakably like Norway's loving answer to Jurassic Park, complete with a creature of genuinely terrifying scale and a breathless race for survival across stunning Arctic landscapes that the camera lingers on with obvious and well-justified pride. It is accessible, it is consistently exciting, and it treats its mythological source material with a respect and a seriousness that elevates it well above the average family adventure. For viewers looking for the ideal entry point into Norse cinema, Ragnarok is very close to perfect. 39th place, The Norseman, 1978. The Norseman is a gloriously, shamelessly cheesy piece of late 1970s American cinema that absolutely nobody in their right mind should approach with any level of critical seriousness. And yet, it is completely and utterly impossible not to love every single frame of it. Lee Majors, at the absolute peak of his television fame as the $6 Million Man, plays a Viking chieftain who crosses the Atlantic and sails to the shores of North America in search of his father, who has been captured by the local indigenous population. Directed by Charles B. Pierce with the kind of cheerful, budget-conscious resourcefulness that defines the very best of 70s exploitation cinema, the film is low on production value, high on raw ambition, and utterly charming in its complete and total sincerity about everything it is attempting to do. Majors brings an earnest physicality and a movie star charisma to the role that elevates the material considerably. And the film's depiction of the Norse arrival in the New World has a rough and tumble, anything-goes energy that makes it enormously watchable even now. The Norseman is not great cinema by any conventional measure, but it is a wonderful and irreplaceable time capsule. 38th place, Viking Women and the Sea Serpent, 1957. The title alone earns this film a permanent and honorable place on any Viking list ever compiled. Roger Corman's spectacular, shameless, magnificently low-budget drive-in classic of 1957 is exactly and precisely what its extraordinary title promises. A group of bold Viking women sail across treacherous and monster-haunted waters in search of their missing husbands, encounter a genuinely impressive sea serpent, considering the available resources, and do battle with a barbarian horde on a distant shore. It is completely wonderfully ludicrous. Corman shoots the whole enterprise with his legendary efficiency and his absolute freedom from pretension. And the result is pure drive-in cinema gold of the finest and most irreplaceable variety. The women warriors at the center of the narrative were genuinely progressive and even somewhat radical for their era, and the film has earned and thoroughly deserves a devoted cult, following that has only grown over the 6 decades since its release. Essential viewing for anyone who loves the beautiful, anarchic, completely irresistible madness of vintage genre, filmmaking at its most uninhibited. 37th place, Pathfinder, 2007. Not to be confused with the extraordinary Norwegian film of the same name that appears later in this countdown, the 2007 American Pathfinder is a visceral, visually stylized, relentlessly kinetic action film directed by Marcus Nispel that takes the Viking invasion of North America as its central dramatic premise and runs with it at full, breathless speed. Set roughly 600 years before Columbus made his famous journey, the story follows a young Norse boy who was raised by a Native American tribe after being left behind by his people, and who must now become the warrior his adopted community needs when a new and savage Viking invasion threatens to destroy everything he loves. The film is soaked in blood and shadow, shot throughout in a desaturated palette that approaches black and white and gives it a genuinely distinctive and striking visual identity that sets it apart from everything else in the genre. Karl Urban is outstanding as the conflicted warrior at the center of the story, a film that knows precisely and unapologetically what it wants to be. 36th place, The Long Ships, 1964. The Long Ships is a rousing, sun-drenched, magnificently technicolor adventure, epic from 1964 that pairs the swaggering, endlessly watchable Richard Widmark as a rogue Viking adventurer with the genuinely majestic Sidney Poitier as a commanding Moorish prince, and sends them both in pursuit of a legendary golden bell of enormous mythical significance. Directed by Jack Cardiff, one of the greatest cinematographers in film history, the movie is pure old-school Hollywood spectacle of the highest and most gloriously entertaining order, packed with sea voyages across treacherous waters, battles on scorching desert sands, and sword fights staged with the gleeful theatrical showmanship that only the golden age of adventure cinema could reliably produce. Poitier is simply magnetic in a role that subverts every expectation the genre had established for itself up to that point. And Widmark brings roguish, self-deprecating charm to every single scene he inhabits. The Long Ships is not remotely historically rigorous and makes absolutely no pretense of being so. But as a sweeping, colorful, endlessly entertaining Norse adventure film, it remains one of the most purely pleasurable entries on this entire list. 35th place, The 13th Warrior, 1999. Based on Michael Crichton's brilliant novel, Eaters of the Dead, The 13th Warrior, tells the gripping story of Ahmad ibn Fadlan, an Arab ambassador played with enormous charm and presence by Antonio Banderas, who finds himself swept up against his considerable better judgment in a quest alongside a band of fierce Norse warriors to battle a mysterious and ancient evil that has been systematically terrorizing a northern kingdom. The film had an infamously, almost legendarily troubled production history, with director John McTiernan being removed during post-production, and Crichton himself taking over for extensive and expensive reshoots, and it bombed with breathtaking completeness at the box office upon its eventual release. But history, as it so often does with films that were ahead of their time, has been immeasurably kinder to it. The 13th Warrior has built one of the most devoted and passionate cult followings in modern genre cinema over the decades since its release, celebrated and cherished for its atmospheric tension, its genuinely menacing villain, and the completely wonderful chemistry between Banderas and the Norse warriors surrounding him. A deeply underrated gem. 34th place, Beowulf, 2007. Robert Zemeckis brought his pioneering motion capture animation technology to the world of Old English legend with this visually audacious and surprisingly psychologically complex adaptation of the Beowulf poem, featuring Ray Winstone as the boastful, deeply flawed, ultimately tragic hero, and Angelina Jolie as a seductive, golden-skinned Grendel's mother who fundamentally reframes everything you thought you understood about the original story. The film generated significant controversy upon its release, with some critics finding the motion capture aesthetic deeply unsettling, and others celebrating its bold, genuinely unprecedented visual imagination. But what truly lingers long after the credits roll is the screenplay, written with considerable intelligence and courage by Neil Gaiman and Roger Avery, which excavates the tragedy buried deep beneath the heroism and asks genuinely uncomfortable and surprisingly modern questions about legacy, masculine pride, and the stories that powerful men tell about themselves and their own greatness. Visually unlike anything that preceded it, and far more emotionally resonant than its reputation would suggest, Beowulf is a much more interesting and rewarding film than most people give it credit for being. 33rd place, Valhalla, Rising, 2009. Nicholas Winding Refn's Valhalla Rising is not a film for everyone, and Refn would almost certainly receive that observation as the sincerest and most satisfying compliment anyone could offer him. Mads Mikkelsen plays One Eye, a mute, utterly ferocious, supernaturally dangerous warrior who escapes from years of brutal captivity and falls in with a band of Christian crusaders embarking on a voyage to the Holy Land that leads them somewhere far stranger, far darker, and far more deeply strange than any of them could possibly have anticipated or prepared for. The film is hypnotic, genuinely abstract, and almost aggressively, defiantly slow in its pacing, with long stretches of near-total silence punctuated suddenly and shockingly by explosions of savage, visceral brutality that hit like a physical blow. Refn draws on the visual vocabulary of Andrei Tarkovsky as much as he does the Norse sagas, creating something that feels less like a conventional narrative film and more like a fever dream carved from stone and painted in blood. Divisive beyond any reasonable measure? Absolutely. Unforgettable without the slightest question. Valhalla Rising is one of the most genuinely original and uncompromising films this entire genre has ever produced. 32nd place, Pathfinder, 1987. Here is the Norwegian original, and it is something categorically, definitively, magnificently else. Niels Gaup's Pathfinder, known in its homeland as Ophelas, is based on an ancient Sami legend and follows a young man who must lead a murderous and relentless band of killers away from his innocent people after they butcher his entire family in a brutal and unprovoked attack. Shot in the overwhelmingly beautiful, utterly merciless snow-covered landscapes of the high Arctic in northern Norway, the film is a visually extraordinary achievement by any international standard. Every single frame feels as though it has been literally carved from ancient ice and impenetrable Arctic silence. The chase sequences that drive the second half of the film are tense and terrifying, beyond almost any reasonable measure, and the spare, elemental quality of the storytelling gives the whole film a mythic resonance that no amount of production budget could ever manufacture or replicate. It earned a well-deserved nomination for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Pathfinder is a masterpiece of Nordic cinema. 31st place, Alfred the Great, 1969. Alfred the Great is a fascinating, criminally overlooked historical epic from 1969, that places the Viking threat front and center in the story of the Anglo-Saxon king who single-handedly refused to allow England to fall permanently to the Danish invaders and reshaped the entire future of a nation in the process. David Hemmings plays Alfred with a restless, conflicted, genuinely compelling intelligence. And the film's portrayal of the Danes, led by a formidable and surprisingly sympathetic Michael York as the Viking chieftain Guthrum, gives the Norse characters a complexity and a dignity that was genuinely unusual for the era. Director Clive Donner shoots the film with a grimy, unglamorous, thoroughly revisionist realism that was very much in the progressive spirit of late 1960s British cinema. The battle sequences are impressively staged for the available budget and the period of production, and the film's sustained exploration of Alfred's inner conflict between his devout Christian faith and the brutal warrior duties his position demands of him gives it a genuine and lasting dramatic weight that elevates it well above the typical historical adventure film of its era. 30th place, How to Train Your Dragon, 2010. Do not let the family-friendly animated packaging mislead you in any way. How to Train Your Dragon is one of the most emotionally sophisticated, visually extraordinary, and thematically rich Norse-inspired films ever committed to the screen by any filmmaker working in any medium anywhere. Set in a richly detailed Viking world of ice fields and crashing northern seas and perpetually overcast dramatic skies, the story follows Hiccup, a slight, bookish, deeply thoughtful boy who defies every fundamental expectation of his warrior culture by choosing to befriend a wounded dragon rather than kill it, and sets in motion a chain of events that will change his world forever. Directors Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois craft a film of genuine, overwhelming beauty and emotional depth, exploring themes of outsiderdom, the radical courage of compassion in the face of tradition, and the painful but necessary process of cultural change. The flight sequences are breathtaking in their technical accomplishment. John Powell's score is flat-out magnificent, and the central relationship between Hiccup and Toothless is one of the most genuinely moving emotional bonds in all of animated cinema, an absolute triumph by every measure. 29th place, The Vikings, 1958. Richard Fleischer's The Vikings is the film that definitively established and shaped the entire genre for an entire generation of moviegoers around the world, and it remains to this day one of the most purely entertaining Norse adventure films ever made by anyone anywhere. Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis play rival Viking half-brothers who do not yet know they share the same blood, competing with ferocious, magnificent, completely irresistible arrogance for the same woman and the same kingdom across the fjords and seas of the Norse world. Ernest Borgnine is an absolute riot as their warrior king father, and the film's gorgeous location photography across the dramatic coastlines of Norway and Brittany gives it a scale and a geographical authenticity that no studio backlot could ever have replicated in 1,000 years. With its breathtaking longship sequences, its brutally staged fight choreography, and its completely irresistible combination of star power and cinematic ambition, The Vikings is as close to the platonic ideal of a Hollywood Norse epic as the studio system ever managed to produce, a stone-cold, timeless classic of the genre. 28th place, The Warlord, 1965. Charlton Heston brings his legendary physical presence and his granite-faced, utterly unshakable dramatic intensity to The Warlord, a dark, morally complex, and genuinely ambitious medieval epic from 1965 that deserves to be mentioned in the same conversation as the greatest films of its era. Heston plays Chrysagon, a Norman knight dispatched to govern a remote, isolated pagan village still living defiantly by ancient Viking-era customs and beliefs, who becomes dangerously obsessively fixated on a local woman on the night before her wedding. Directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, with considerable psychological intelligence and a genuine willingness to dwell in moral ambiguity, the film is far grittier and far more nuanced than the typical sword and spectacle adventure of its Hollywood era. Its detailed and respectful depiction of pre-Christian Norse pagan customs, and its exploration of the violent collision between Christian institutional authority and ancient Norse belief, gives it an anthropological depth and seriousness that is genuinely rare in genre cinema. Heston is magnificent throughout, and the film stands as one of the great overlooked epics of 1960s Hollywood. 27th place, the Northman-adjacent Braveheart, 1995. Mel Gibson's Braveheart is one of the towering war epics of modern cinema, a sprawling, passionately committed, ferociously energetic film about William Wallace's legendary rebellion against English colonial rule in 13th century Scotland that operates not as careful history, but as pure, burning myth. Gibson directs and stars simultaneously with an intensity that borders on genuine religious conviction, and the result is a film of extraordinary and sustained emotional power that grabs audiences from its opening frames and never once loosens its grip. The Battle of Stirling, recreated on a truly massive scale in the rolling Irish countryside, with thousands of extras and an audacious commitment to practical filmmaking, remains one of the most viscerally exciting and emotionally overwhelming large-scale battle sequences ever recorded on film. Is it historically accurate? Emphatically, magnificently, gloriously not. But historical accuracy was never remotely the point Gibson was making. The point was the fire, the fury, the grief, and the unbreakable human need for freedom that transcends every century and every culture. And on those terms, Braveheart succeeds beyond any expectation. Freedom. 26th place, The Green Knight, 2021. David Lowery's The Green Knight is the most visually audacious, thematically ambitious, and intellectually rewarding Arthurian film ever committed to celluloid. And it draws so deeply and so intelligently from the shared well of Norse and Celtic mythology that it belongs without any argument at the top tier of any list dedicated to this broad and magnificent tradition. Dev Patel plays Gawain, a young, aimless, fundamentally unproven knight who accepts an impulsive challenge from the mysterious and genuinely terrifying Green Knight and embarks on a long winter journey northward that tests his courage, his honor, his sense of self, and the very nature and meaning of chivalric heroism itself. The film is gorgeous beyond easy description. Shot in the Irish landscape with a painterly, dreamlike, manuscript-illuminated beauty that operates somewhere between vision and memory. It is also profoundly strange, genuinely patient in a way that modern blockbusters never dare to be, and completely unwilling to deliver the clean, triumphant, crowd-pleasing heroic resolution that the genre has always promised its audiences. That refusal, courageous and absolute, is precisely what makes it a masterpiece of the highest order. 25th place, Centurion, 2010. Neil Marshall's Centurion is a ferocious, blood-soaked, relentlessly kinetic chase film set in the frozen highlands of 2nd century Roman Britain, following a small group of desperate Roman soldiers being hunted with terrifying efficiency across some of the most dramatic and unforgiving landscape in the known world by a lethal Pictish warrior named Etain, played with absolute magnetic menace by the extraordinary Olga Kurilenko. While it technically predates the Viking Age proper, the world that Marshall creates in Centurion, painted in equal measures of mud, blood, and howling northern wind, shares every single essential quality and every fundamental spirit of the Norse war film tradition that defines this list. Marshall photographs the Scottish Highlands with a sublime, almost overwhelming natural beauty that makes the landscape feel simultaneously gorgeous and genuinely, deeply terrifying, and the action sequences throughout are staged with a raw, punishing, bone-cracking physical intensity that simply never releases its grip from the first frame to the last. Michael Fassbender is excellent in the central role. Centurion is visceral, beautiful, and utterly unsparing in every respect. Exactly the kind of uncompromising filmmaking this genre was built to celebrate. 24th place, Excalibur, 1981. John Boorman's Excalibur is the definitive cinematic realization of Arthurian legend, and one of the most visually magnificent and emotionally overwhelming films of its entire era, drawing from the same primordial mythological tradition that produced the Norse sagas and presenting the result with an operatic grandeur and a pagan ferocity that has never been remotely surpassed by anything that followed it. The complete story of Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, the wizard Merlin, and the eternal quest for the Holy Grail is presented in all its dark, complicated, morally ambiguous pagan and Christian, beautiful and terrible glory, with Nicol Williamson's completely electrifying performance as Merlin and Helen Mirren's magnificently ferocious turn as Morgana, standing as two of the most commanding and unforgettable supporting performances in the entire history of fantasy cinema. The armor catches the light of dark forests, the blood runs black in the mud of ancient battlefields, and the forest itself whispers with an ancient and indifferent power in every single frame Borman composes. Borman uses Wagner and Orff on the soundtrack, with an audacity that could easily have felt pompous or absurd, and instead feels absolutely perfectly historically inevitable. Mythic cinema at its absolute peak. 23rd place, Conan the Barbarian, 1982. John Milius's Conan the Barbarian is one of the purest, most direct, and most powerful expressions of the Norse warrior code ever captured on film. And the fact that it is technically set in Robert E. Howard's entirely fictional Hyborian age, rather than any real historical period, changes absolutely nothing fundamental about that truth. A young Sumerian boy watches his parents slaughtered by the serpent cult warlord Thulsa Doom, grows to manhood as a slave, and then a gladiator, and then the most lethally dangerous man alive, driven by nothing but grief, rage, and an absolutely implacable desire for vengeance against the man who destroyed everything he ever loved. Arnold Schwarzenegger embodies Conan with a physical magnificence and a focused, burning intensity that goes beyond conventional acting into something closer to pure, elemental cinematic force. And James Earl Jones is sublimely, chillingly sinister as the charismatic villain Doom. The film is shot and paced and structured like a Norse saga, given flesh and breath and purpose. And Basil Poldoris's extraordinary operatic orchestral score provides what is, without serious argument, one of the single greatest pieces of original film music ever composed. Absolutely timeless. 22nd place, The Northman, 2022. First mention, Robert Eggers' The Northman, announced itself immediately upon release as something categorically different from anything else the Viking genre had ever attempted or achieved, and the critical and popular conversation it generated confirmed what anyone who saw it in a cinema already knew with complete certainty. Alexander Skarsgård plays Amleth, a Viking prince carrying a childhood vow of vengeance against the uncle who murdered his father and enslaved his mother. A story that directly inspired Shakespeare's Hamlet and is presented here in its raw, pre-literary, mythologically unfiltered original form. Eggers researched the Norse world with the obsessive, unrelenting thoroughness of a devoted academic, drawing directly on the prose and poetic Eddas, the family sagas, and decades of recent archaeological scholarship to construct a world that feels genuinely, shockingly, almost physically real in a way no previous Viking film ever managed. The berserker sequences, the shamanic rituals, the skaldic poetry recited over burning ships, the cosmology of fate, and the will of the Norns. All of it lands with the unmistakable weight of authentic cultural memory rather than Hollywood invention. We will return to this film before this countdown is finished. 21st place, The Seventh Seal, 1957. Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal is the single film that defined the image of medieval Scandinavian darkness, spiritual desolation, and existential courage for the entire watching world. And its influence on every serious Norse war film that followed it is immeasurable and impossible to overstate. A knight returning, shattered and faithless from the Crusades, plays a game of chess with the figure of death himself, on a plague-ravaged Swedish beach, seeking meaning and demanding answers in a world that offers neither comfort nor explanation. Max von Sydow delivers one of the most quietly devastating performances in the history of world cinema as the knight Antonius Block. And Bergman's direction is so precise, so fully and completely realized in its visual language and its moral architecture, that every single frame feels not merely composed, but inevitable. The film draws directly and consciously on the Norse tradition of men who stare unflinching into the void, who demand answers from an indifferent universe even knowing that none will come, and who choose to act with honor and dignity regardless of the silence that answers them. The greatest Scandinavian film ever made, an absolute pinnacle. 20th place, Apocalypto, 2006. Mel Gibson's Apocalypto is a savage, breathless, visually overwhelming, and genuinely extraordinary piece of filmmaking that follows a young Mesoamerican tribesman fighting with every last resource he possesses to survive a brutal capture and return to the family waiting for him in the jungle. It is not set in the Norse world by any geographical definition, but it is animated by the exact same primal, ferocious, completely unadorned spirit that drives and defines the very greatest Viking epics ever made. The chase sequence that dominates and drives the film's electrifying second half is one of the most sustained, heart-stopping, technically brilliant, and emotionally overwhelming pieces of action filmmaking ever achieved by anyone in the history of the medium. And Gibson shoots the Mesoamerican jungle with the same visceral, absolutely unsparing immediacy and reverence for hostile landscape that Eggers would bring years later to the Norse wilderness of the Northmen. It is a film about what a human being will endure and sacrifice for the people he loves, told with absolute directness, absolute commitment, and absolutely zero concession to comfort or convention. One of the truly great action films of the 21st century. 19th place, The Last Duel, 2021. Ridley Scott's The Last Duel is a masterwork of medieval historical storytelling that uses the Rashomon narrative structure to examine a disputed assault in 14th century France with a moral urgency and a contemporary relevance that is genuinely and deliberately startling in its directness and its courage. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck play Norman knights whose long friendship fractures catastrophically over the alleged assault of Damon's wife, played by Jodie Comer, in what is frankly one of the finest and most emotionally precise performances of the entire decade. The film's tripartite structure, presenting three completely different and equally partial versions of the same events, exposes the machinery of patriarchal justice and institutionalized male self-deception, with a clarity that is simultaneously historically faithful to the medieval record and devastatingly urgently relevant to the present moment. The jousting sequences and battlefield combat throughout the film are staged with the brutal, anatomically convincing realism that Scott has always excelled at delivering. But it is the film's extraordinary intellectual architecture and its moral seriousness that make it truly and lastingly exceptional. One of Ridley Scott's very finest films, by any measure. 18th place, Kingdom of Heaven, Director's Cut, 2005. Ridley Scott's director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven is a genuinely monumental historical epic about the Crusades that was released to the public in a savagely truncated theatrical cut, and then restored to its full, magnificent intended form on home video, transforming in the process from a flawed but interesting film into something approaching a masterpiece of the genre. Orlando Bloom delivers a performance of real nuance and emotional depth as Balian, a French blacksmith who travels to Jerusalem and finds himself thrust into the role of defender of a city he barely understands. The film's Norse thematic DNA, the warrior's code of honor, the collision between incompatible civilizations, the absolute impossibility of clean moral victory in a world defined by competing absolutes, runs through every frame of the director's cut. The Siege of Jerusalem sequences are staggering in their technical scale, their physical choreography, and their genuine emotional weight. Eva Green is magnetic, Jeremy Irons is magnificent, and the film as a whole represents Scott's most ambitious and most underappreciated historical achievement. 17th place, Gladiator, 2000. Ridley Scott's Gladiator is one of the great action epics of modern cinema, and its thematic core, the warrior's unbreakable code of loyalty and honor, the burning desire for vengeance against those who abuse power, the duty owed to the fallen and the beloved dead, is Norse to its very bones, regardless of its Roman setting. Russell Crowe's Maximus is in every way that truly matters a Norse warrior transplanted into the arena of ancient Rome, driven by the same fierce codes of personal loyalty and righteous vengeance that animate the greatest Viking sagas ever written or filmed. The gladiatorial combat sequences are staggering in their ferocity, their choreographic invention, and their sheer, overwhelming visceral impact, and Hans Zimmer's score remains one of the most emotionally devastating and majestic soundtracks in the entire history of cinema. A film of genuine grandeur and genuine, deeply felt grief, Gladiator reminds us powerfully and beautifully that the warrior tradition at its deepest and most meaningful level belongs to no single nation, no single culture, and no single era. It is universal and eternal, a towering achievement. 16th place, Thor, 2011. Say whatever you like about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its industrial approach to mythology, Kenneth Branagh's original Thor film accomplished something genuinely remarkable that deserves honest and serious acknowledgement. It took the full weight of the Norse pantheon, Odin seated on his throne in Asgard, Loki spinning his web of beautiful deceptions, the 9 realms hanging in cosmic balance, and made it feel simultaneously mythically grand in its scale and urgently, immediately emotionally real in its human drama. Chris Hemsworth is beautifully cast as the arrogant, banished thunder god who must learn humility before he can reclaim his birthright. But it is Tom Hiddleston's Loki who elevates the entire film into something genuinely special and lastingly meaningful with a performance of staggering psychological complexity and heartbreaking emotional precision. A villain who is never simply a villain, a brother who loves and hates and envies and grieves in equal devastating measure. Branagh brings his lifelong Shakespearean instincts to the family dynamics at the film's core, and the result is a Norse mythology film with real dramatic weight and genuine emotional stakes beneath all the spectacular superhero surface. Far better than it had any right to be. 15th place, Northman, a Viking saga, 2014. Northman, a Viking saga, is precisely the kind of propulsive, elegantly crafted, deeply satisfying Viking action film that the genre genuinely needed in 2014, and it delivered on its considerable promise with an efficiency and a commitment that deserves real recognition. When a group of Norse warriors are violently shipwrecked on the rocky coast of Scotland, they are forced to fight their way across miles of hostile, rain-soaked enemy territory, with a captured Frankish princess as both their bargaining chip and their moral complication, while being relentlessly pursued by the most ruthless mercenary hunters their enemies can hire. Director Claudio Fee maintains an absolutely relentless pace throughout. The action sequences are consistently staged with impressive craft and considerable physical imagination, and the Scottish locations provide a sweeping, dramatically overcast, authentically Viking backdrop that suits every aspect of the story with perfect fidelity. Tom Hopper is outstanding as the fierce, honorable, conflicted Viking warrior at the moral center of the narrative. Not a film of great subtlety or philosophical ambition, but a tremendously, generously, completely entertaining one that delivers everything its title promises and then some. 14th place, The Raid, 2011. For sheer overwhelming action, choreography, and the visceral, almost musical poetry of sustained combat. Filmed at the absolute peak of the form, nothing in modern cinema comes close to touching what Gareth Evans accomplished with The Raid. This Indonesian martial arts masterpiece may take place in a Jakarta apartment building rather than a Norse longship or a Scandinavian battlefield, but its spiritual kinship with the Viking war film tradition is unmistakable and profound at every level. A young police officer becomes trapped in a tower block, controlled by a ruthless crime lord, and what unfolds over the next 100 minutes is one of the most extraordinarily sustained, technically inventive, and physically overwhelming action sequences in the entire history of the medium. The fighting throughout is brutal, endlessly creative, and constantly, thrillingly escalating to new levels of danger and desperation. The warrior code, the brotherhood under impossible pressure, the absolute refusal to yield in the face of unwinnable odds. It is pure Norse spirit filtered through Indonesian pencak silat and the vision of a director operating at the absolute peak of his considerable powers. An undeniable landmark. 13th place, Robert the Bruce, 2019. A quiet, powerful, and deeply humane companion piece to Braveheart, Robert the Bruce follows Scotland's legendary king at the absolute lowest and most desperate point of his entire life. Hiding in the frozen hills with no army, no allies, and no apparent future, kept barely alive by the compassion of a single farming family who risk everything they have simply by offering him shelter. Angus MacFadyen reprises the role he first played in Braveheart a full 24 years earlier, with a depth, a weariness, and an authority that makes you wonder immediately and with some frustration why it took anyone that long to give him his own story to carry. Director Richard Gray shoots the Scottish Highlands with a stark, elemental, genuinely awe-inspiring natural beauty, and the film's sustained, patient exploration of what it truly means to lead broken people, to find the will to stand up one more time after every conceivable reason to give up has been exhausted, is quietly and unexpectedly devastating in its emotional effect. A gem. 12th place, Beowulf and Grendel Extended, replacing Centurion Extended, replacing The Eagle 2011. Kevin McDonald's. The Eagle transports its audience to the frozen, rain-lashed edges of 2nd century Roman Britain and follows Marcus Flavius Aquila, played with quiet determination and real emotional intelligence by Channing Tatum, on a quest beyond the terrifying boundary of Hadrian's Wall into the untamed territories of the north to recover his disgraced father's lost golden standard from the tribes who claimed it. The film's portrayal of the Caledonian warriors living beyond Rome's reach carries the unmistakable, fully realized spirit of the Norse war tradition in every scene. And Jamie Bell is simply outstanding as Eska, the British slave whose shifting loyalties and complicated relationship with his Roman master drive the emotional engine of the entire film. MacDonald photographs the Scottish and Hungarian landscapes with a cold, breathtaking severity and a restrained beauty that makes the natural world feel both magnificent and actively hostile to human survival. The film's exploration of honor, duty, and the morally complex relationship between conqueror and conquered gives it an intellectual depth and a genuine seriousness of purpose that elevates it well above the standard historical action adventure. A quietly exceptional film. 11th place, 1999, replacing Final, The Northman 2022, full entry. We come now to the film that changed Viking cinema permanently and irreversibly. Robert Eggers' The Northman is the most authentic, most uncompromising, and most extraordinary Viking film ever committed to the screen. And its underperformance at the box office remains one of the genuine injustices of modern cinematic history. Alexander Skarsgård plays Amleth with a terrifying, grief-hollowed physical intensity that goes beyond performance into something rawer and more fundamental. Eggers drew on the Eddas and the family sagas and decades of Norse archaeological scholarship to construct a world that operates by its own absolute mythological logic, where fate is not a metaphor, but a living cosmological force, where the gods are real and present and pitiless, and where a man's weird, his destiny, is written before he takes his first breath. Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicole Kidman, Willem Dafoe, and Ethan Hawke surround Skarsgård with performances of matching commitment and power. And Jorin Blashka's cinematography is nothing short of sublime in its beauty and its dark ferocity. The Northman is not merely the greatest Viking film ever made, it is one of the great films of its entire decade. 10th place, The Seventh Seal Revisited Extended, replacing The Long Ships Revisited, Final, Excalibur Revisited, placing Pathfinder Norwegian here, Olfalas 1987. Extended Niels Galp's Pathfinder earns its place in the top 10, not through spectacle or star power, but through sheer, concentrated, overwhelming cinematic purity. Shot in conditions of genuine Arctic extremity, the film distills the Norse survival tradition to its most elemental and most terrifying essence. A young man against a hostile world, a code of protection for the innocent, a landscape so beautiful and so lethal that it functions as both setting and antagonist simultaneously. There is nothing wasted in this film, not a single frame, not a single note of its extraordinary score. It is tight, it is relentless, it is magnificently, almost perfectly made. In any other era, on any other list, it would sit comfortably at number 1. The fact that it lands here at 10 tells you everything about the extraordinary quality of the films above it. 9th place, The Vikings, 1958. Extended. Kirk Douglas did not just make a Viking film in 1958. He made the Viking film the template, the measuring stick against which every subsequent entry in the genre has been consciously or unconsciously measured. The The combination of Douglas's volcanic charisma, Tony Curtis's wounded intelligence, Ernest Borgnine's magnificent bellowing presence, and Richard Fleischer's supremely confident direction creates a film that feels larger than its own running time, more alive than its genre conventions, and more emotionally resonant than a film this cheerfully, gloriously entertaining has any right to be. Every set piece, from the wolf pit sequence to the final sword duel on the castle ramparts, is staged and shot with the confidence of a filmmaker who knows he is working at the absolute height of his powers. The Vikings remains, 67 years after its release, the most purely joyful film on this entire list. And joy, properly earned, is its own form of greatness. 8th place, Conan the Barbarian, 1982, extended top placement. John Milius made a film in 1982 that was about a fictional character in a fictional world, and somehow produced one of the most complete and satisfying expressions of the Norse warrior mythos in the history of cinema. Every element, the origin in slaughter and loss, the years of hardship forging an unbreakable will, the quest for vengeance against overwhelming power, the worship of strength, and the acceptance of death as simply the next horizon, comes directly from the great Norse tradition. Basil Polidorus' score is not merely music, it is mythology made audible. Schwarzenegger is not merely acting, he is embodying an archetype. And Milius is not merely directing, he is conjuring something ancient and deep and genuinely powerfully true about the human appetite for heroism. A film that will last as long as people care about what warriors are for. 7th place, Braveheart, 1995, extended. The visceral, aching, enormously alive quality of Braveheart derives from the fact that Mel Gibson did not approach it as a history lesson, or as an action franchise, or as a cultural product. He approached it as a myth, with all the reverence and all the reckless, consuming passion that genuine myth-making demands. The Battle of Stirling sequence does not feel like a film. It feels like something witnessed, something survived, something carried in the body long after the screen has gone dark. And the film's emotional climax, Wallace's refusal to submit even at the cost of everything, is one of the great moments in the entire tradition of the war film. Not because it is historically accurate, but because it is humanly, completely, and devastatingly true. 6th place, The Green Knight, 2021. Extended David Lowery's film asks a question that the Norse sagas asked first and most powerfully. What is the cost of honor? Not the reward, not the glory, the actual irreducible personal cost of choosing to be the person your code demands you be, regardless of what that choice takes from you. Dev Patel carries that question through every frame of a film, so visually rich and so morally serious that it demands multiple viewings to fully absorb. The Green Knight is not an action film. It is not quite a fantasy film in any conventional sense. It is a meditation on heroism, conducted at the precise, agonizing intersection of courage and cowardice, where most of us actually live. In that territory, it is genuinely, permanently, unquestionably masterful. 5th place, The Northman, 2022, definitive final entry. We return, as this list was always going to Robert Eggers and his extraordinary, shattering, permanently important film. The Northman is the greatest Viking film ever made because it is the only one that truly, fully, without compromise or apology, inhabits the Norse world from the inside. Not as spectacle, not as adventure, as belief. Amleth does not pursue vengeance because the plot requires it. He pursues it because his cosmos demands it, because his Wired has been written, because the Norns have woven it, and the only question remaining is whether he is man enough to fulfill what fate has chosen for him. Eggers makes you feel that weight. He makes you feel the cold. He makes you feel the fire of the burning longhouses and the darkness of the Icelandic winter, and the terrible, magnificent indifference of the Norse gods. No other film on this list achieves anything close to that. The Northman is the gold standard. 4th place, Apocalypto, 2006, extended final position. Gibson's second appearance in the top 5 of this list is not an accident. Apocalypto and Braveheart together represent something important and rare in big-budget popular cinema. A filmmaker willing to trust myth completely, to strip away every safety net of irony and self-consciousness, and to deliver primal human experience with no mediation whatsoever. Jaguar paws run through the jungle is Amleth's berserker charge on the beach, is Wallace's last refusal to bend. The same archetype, the same fire, the same Norse spirit, expressed through different cultures and different centuries. Gibson has flaws as a human being that are well documented and impossible to dismiss. But as a maker of mythic war cinema, he is operating in a tradition that stretches directly back to the Norse skalds, and Apocalypto is his masterwork. Third place, The Seventh Seal, 1957, final position. Bergman's knight does not win his chess game. He does not defeat death. He does not find the answers his faith has promised him, and his experience has stripped away. He simply keeps playing. He keeps asking. He performs one small act of grace and compassion in the shadow of his own annihilation, and that act is enough. That is the Norse spirit in its most distilled, most philosophical, most permanently true form. Not victory, not glory. The willingness to face the abyss with your eyes fully open and to act with honor regardless. The Seventh Seal is not a Viking film. It is the Viking spirit made universal, made timeless, made into art of the very highest order. Bergman understood the Norse world in his bones, and this film is the proof. Second place, Excalibur, 1981, final position. John Boorman's Excalibur earns its place at second on this list, because it achieves something that almost no mythological film has ever achieved before or since. It makes you believe, not suspend disbelief. Actually, genuinely emotionally believe in the world it creates, in the magic and the tragedy and the terrible, beautiful cost of living, by a code that the world is not quite noble enough to sustain. The scene where Arthur draws Excalibur from the stone and the land itself seems to wake from a long sleep is one of the most genuinely transcendent moments in cinema. And the film's final, devastating image of a dying king born across dark water into myth is the Norse spirit and the Celtic spirit and the universal human spirit of heroism and loss made permanent. Excalibur is one of the greatest films ever made, in any genre, by any measure. First place, The Northman, 2022. And so, we arrive here, The Northman. Robert Eggers' film is the greatest Viking movie ever made, full stop. It is the moment when a filmmaker with complete mastery of his craft finally delivered the Norse saga film this genre had been promising and failing to produce for 100 years. Alexander Skarsgård's Amleth is a figure pulled straight from the oldest human stories, the orphaned prince, the avenger sworn, the man forged entirely from grief and loss and an implacable need for justice. Eggers gives us the Norse world whole and unfiltered, its gods, its monsters, its violence, and its heartbreaking beauty, without irony, without condescension, and without a single concession to an audience that might want something easier. The Northman demands everything from you, and it gives everything back. The 50 greatest Viking movies of all time. This genre is richer and stranger than most people realize. And if even one film on this list sends you reaching for the remote, then this countdown has done its job.